Hi everyone, I have some interesting Bible codes that I would like to share with you, and these are coming up on the word August. And as you can see here, there's 4 different matches for the word August. So there's 4 different matrices, but the last 2 matrices actually overlap. They're coming up in the book of Acts. This is the 4th one. And if you go back one, you can see that's also coming up in the book of Acts, chapter 27. And in this one, you have the word August coming up in the plain text. It's actually part of the word Augustine, but it overlaps with the last matrix here that's also in the book of Acts, chapter 27, just a few verses down. And this time it comes up in ELS form. So it's basically coming up in the same chapter once in ELS form and the other time in the plain text, which I think that makes it even more significant that it's coming up both ways in the same chapter in Acts chapter 27. But it does show up as 2 different matrices, but these 2 matrices overlap each other, so it's almost as if it's one matrix. And then the matrix prior to that was coming up in the book of Luke, and then the first matrix that was coming up was in the book of Genesis. So what I'm going to do is when I go over the terms, I'm just going to be skipping back and forth between these 3 or 4 matrices and just showing you how the different terms come up as they would come up as I was searching them, because I like to just go over things in the order that I searched things out. So as it was skipping around between these different matrices, I'm just going to show it to you that way, and I'll just show you which matrix it comes up in as I go along. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that I had done several Bible codes. If you recall, back in April there was quite a few different Bible codes that came up on the word April, and there was 2 in particular that actually went viral that I thought were really profound, and I put them out as April warning videos. And I actually thought this second one here was even more profound because it had the word Messiah that came up, but this first one actually went a little viral, actually got up to 12,000 views on this one. But from August, this would have been about 4 months back, and what's important to note is that there was a wheat harvest back in April, but that would have been the winter wheat harvest, the one that would have been planted in the winter and would have matured in the spring. But there's also a summer wheat harvest that gets planted the 1st of Nisan. It gets planted in the spring and then it matures 4 months later. And that could have been what Jesus was talking about in John 4:35 when he said, "Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest." So the fields would have been white in April, and they would have been ready to harvest, but then 4 months later there would be another harvest, which would be the summer harvest. And this is something that I had explained briefly in the last video that I had done. It's actually the one before the last one. It was this one right here, where I said Jesus is still coming and is Pentecost really over, where I had discussed what might be the true counting for Pentecost. And there's also a video that's in my likes that's a very good video that explains that as well. So if you haven't seen this video by Silva, that's a really good video to watch that explains how there's 2 wheat harvests, and One of those is the spring harvest that would mature around the time of Nisan, around first fruits, but then 4 months later would be the summer harvest, which would line up with what might be the true count for Pentecost, and that would be 4 months later during the summer months, and that would be the main wheat harvest for the year, which would have started on Nisan 1, and the one that matured in Nisan would have been the one from the previous year. So it would not be a new offering. The new offering that's talked about in Leviticus 23 would be the one of the new year, which would have started on Nisan 1 and would have been 4 months later. So that could have been the harvest that Jesus was talking about here in John 4:35. So that might explain why all those Bible codes were coming up for the month of April, and that the fields were white and ready to harvest, but the actual harvest of the end of the age may be that it's 4 months later. Another thing that I wanted to go over is some of the dates that were mentioned in these videos here, where I talked about what could be the true count for Pentecost. And I'm not sure if I'm going to go back over those dates again, but I just want to show you how they all fall within the constellation Leo, and you can see an image of it here. But what I want to do is show you this Wikipedia article on the constellation Leo, and just show you the dates for the constellation Leo. And it says here astrology, which I know it's not good to follow astrology, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to show you the dates that the sun appears in the constellation Leo, which is just an astronomical fact. It's okay to follow astronomy and to look at the signs that God has placed in the heavens to signal his coming and to signal moeds, as we're told to do in Genesis. It's okay to follow the stars for that purpose. But when it comes to following them in terms of trying to tell the future and things about yourself or other people, then that's when it becomes evil. That's when it becomes astrology, which is what we need to stay away from. But just studying the stars in a biblical perspective, there's nothing wrong with doing that. So as you can see here, the sun is in the constellation Leo from August 10th through September 10th, but it's actually considered to be in the sign of Leo from July 23rd to August 27th. And then it says here in sidereal astrology is from August 16th to September 17th. So anytime from July 23rd to about September 17th would be considered to be the constellation Leo, or the time that the sun is in the constellation Leo, which you can see in this image right here. And what I wanted to point out about the constellation Leo is this part right here, which seems to form the shape of a sickle. And I thought that was significant because that's something I had talked about in this video over here. I had planned to talk about the sickle that's mentioned in Revelation 14, and when I was doing that, I had no idea at the time that the constellation Leo is actually shaped, or the head of Leo is actually shaped as the form of a sickle, and that was in fact the second definition of the word sickle, which I didn't even notice that until I had pulled it up in the process of doing this video right here. So I didn't even know that until I was doing the video, that Leo is actually shaped like a sickle. And that was an important thing that I had talked about in this video. So that was just a coincidence, and I just think that's another confirmation of the time that we're in and what it could possibly represent. And with that, I just want to go ahead and go into the Bible codes that I have on August. And the first thing that I wanted to mention is, as I had said before, there was 4 matches to the word August. So the first thing I thought I would try is August 4th, which didn't come up, but August 4 did come up. And what's interesting about August 4 is that it happens to be Obama's birthday, and the very first verse that comes up here is in Luke 178. It says, "Because of the tender mercy of our God, whereby the day spring from on high shall visit us." And I've talked about in other videos how there's 2 morning stars, and the way you can get those 2, or get all of those verses to come up concerning the morning star, is to actually look for it in the NIV, and it'll bring up all of those references to the morning star. And as you can see, it refers to the false Christ as well as the true Christ. And over here in Isaiah 14, it's talking about the false one. It says, "How have you fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn? You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations." And then over here in 2 Peter 1:19, it's actually talking about the true Christ. And it says, "We also have the prophetic message as something completely reliable, and you will do well to pay attention to it as to a light shining in a dark place until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts." And over here in Revelation 2:28 says, "I will also give that one the morning star." In Revelation 22:16 it says, "I, Jesus, have sent my angel to you to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star." So there's the true morning star, which is Jesus, and the false morning star, which would be Lucifer. And so you see here in this Bible code for August, where I had put in August 4, came up in Luke 178, and the very first verse talks about the day spring, which would basically be the morning star. Because if you go look at Luke 178, you'll see that it's talking about the rising sun. Over here, this is the NIV version. It says, "Because of the tender mercy of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven." And like I've said before in other videos, there's a true dawn, a true rising of the sun, and a false dawn. And you can see that when you pull up this word for dawn or the rising of the sun, you can see that it also refers to the dawn. And you can see when you look at Isaiah 14, where it talks about Lucifer falling from heaven, and it calls him the son of the morning. You can see when you look at it here in the Greek, you can see the word dawn right here, which is the same word that was in over here in Luke 178. It talked about the dawn. You see the word right here for dawn, and it comes from this other word, which also means the rising of the sun. And this word right here is the same word that's in Isaiah. You can see it's the same word right here in Isaiah 14:12. 12. And I'm about out of time in this video, so I'm going to have to continue in the next video. Thanks.